everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Marti. Marti, say hi.
Hi, everybody. This is exciting.
Yeah, and so Marti, explain like who you are, where you're from, what's going on.
Yeah, I'm Marti Rogers. I'm a wealth creation, wealth protection advocate. I'm in San Jose, California, and I'm licensed throughout the country. I'm just really glad that we're doing this today because we're going to talk about some powerful.
Yeah, so today we're actually going to be talking about, or you're going to be telling us about a talk based on how people can need to know their money before they can start to grow their money, right?
Exactly.
So tell us more about like what that is and what kind of are the main notes for this talk.
So, basically, I basically want to start by calling it out, the situation that most people are in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is no judgment, it's just reality, and it's not our fault, but I want to empower people to have a financial understanding, and that's the approach I take.
Yes.
you know and wouldn't you agree that most of us in society are living with too much debt?
There's so much debt. I think the national. I actually stopped keeping track of the national debt because it does fluctuate, but it's somewhere I think in like the trillions. It's
It is.
usually
It's
it's
about
usually the billions or
23 about
trillions.
23 trillion. Yeah.
Oh, it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, if you divide that by the population, it's still like even though we have a large population in the U.S., it is still a massive amount,
Hmm.
and it's just detrimental. So I
Yeah,
think yeah,
that's just a
everyone's
lot of downward pressure, right?
yeah.
So that downward pressure is impacted by not understanding how to get out of it, and getting into it wasn't necessarily even intentional. It was basically a lack of financial understanding, financial empowerment, and I want to kind of pull back the curtain on that. Those
Yeah.
three enemies that we're going to talk about. And then, it only makes sense if I talk about those enemies. It definitely makes sense to talk about some bullet points of how to get out of it.
Oh yeah, I think definitely people. A lot of people understand that they don't have necessarily the financial education or understanding. I mean, we both kind of deal with that, but being able to not just know that you have a problem, which is kind of like I'm
Right.
hearing myself and I'm like I'm going into how you deal with an addiction or how you
Right.
deal with a problem. Once you have to identify the problem before you can start to fix it, and that goes for any field, whether it's finance or anything else. So, what would you say are the main issues, besides people not knowing that or not being financially educated? Is there any other
Right.
one like that's a big one for you?
Absolutely. So, like I was saying, number one would, if there were like three main ones, I would say number one would be lack of financial education, right? And when there's a lack of understanding, there's a lack of focus. But I'd say the second part would be there's a lack of discipline.
Oh yeah.
you know because if you don't understand it, how can you be aware of having the discipline, and like maybe even a system, right? And
Yeah.
then with a lack of awareness, a lack of discipline leads to poor decision making. you know for example,
Yes.
if I know that you're in education, thank goodness for that, and you want to empower young people, and their parents want to have access, and we're craving it, right? And it's
Yes.
kind of hard to even articulate it. And it maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it comes out with like, do you have anything for me? Do you have anything for us?
I hear that all
And
the time. It's the number
there's
one
this
thing parents say.
quiet suffering on the underground, and it's very overwhelming. And so
Yeah.
people don't know what to do, how to do it, and even why, and all these moving parts just kind of leads to more overwhelm, and there's a big price that's being paid for that too.
There is, and it's also not just a price with the parents. It becomes a generational price, which the kids are being affected by seeing their parents, and that lasts. And I know that when we've talked before, you've talked about generational wealth, and there's also I mean there's finances, whether it's good or bad. Like there's a generational impact on that, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
just
and
yourself.
and everybody has their own interpretation of wealth.
Yeah, of
Wealth
course.
could mean like, what, I just kind of kept everything afloat this month, and I'm not feeling like this anxiety. that's
Yeah.
that's huge, now that could be a powerful building block too, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
And
you
so
have
yeah,
to be able to breathe.
absolutely. So absolutely. So if I were to say, one, two, or three, it would be lack of understanding because of not educated or guided. That leads to poor decision making, which results in lack of the discipline, and then lack of good decision making because our thoughts are kind of scattered. We grow up, we go to school, we're taught go get a good job, or that was the traditional model.
Yes.
We know that that's traditional, but sometimes we know intuitively that that's not going to be the answer. But going to college, is something very powerful and wonderful. But what it does is it misses that target of, keeping people on track, and that leads to student loan debt, and then having to, when they get a job, they have to borrow money because they're already in debt. It's just compounding that problem even more.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it becomes what seems out of control.
So, I mean, we've identified the problems, the three main problems of the lack of financial awareness, and then the lack of discipline and poor decision making that can seriously detrimentally affect both, your financial situation as well as, then your children's financial situation, and
Right.
also be a detriment to being able to teach your children to make better financial decisions and a better financial future, because we all know we want our kids to do better. So
Absolutely.
so is there any like one or two like tips or things that you have identified that can really help parents, and what it is that they need to do, or
Yes,
something like that?
absolutely. And this isn't something that happens overnight, but three bullet points I'll just say right here is we want to understand that it's important to make money, to know how to make it, right?
Yes.
The second step is when you make money, you want to keep it. You want to consistently have a habit of saving it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how small it is as long as it's consistent, okay?
Yes.
Because a lot of people go, well, how much is it? It's like, you know what, let's focus on what you can, and, commit to what you can do, so you can set yourself up with, the confidence, self-esteem of like, hey, I'm being loyal to something for myself, right?
Yeah.
And then gradually you're going to want to increase that. And that consistency is going to help you define and have that a very established habit, and then you want to grow it. Okay.
Awesome.
Now, there's much more ways. I mean, we can kind of get a little bit more involved, and some people
Mm-hmm.
have, issues with, debt. That's the area to kind of get out of the way. And there's some strategies, there's some plans that could be put in place if it's if it's suitable for the person, of course.
Yeah.
And just taking that heavy weight off their back, they realized just how much it was burdening them. So imagine if you could start, to implement a strategy where 30 to 50% of your debt is like lifted, to
Wow.
start with.
That would.
Like putting money back into your pocket, right?
Yeah. And I
So
love that those two kind of feed into each other, both making money and, making sure that you keep it, because obviously if someone has a large amount of debt they're trying to pay down, they're not keeping their money. It's going toward this. But if
exactly,
you
exactly.
reduce that even by like even a quarter, like I can't imagine, there are probably so many people out there that could just do so much with that money, and it would put them ahead so much to be able to have a little bit more money at the end of the month, to either go towards savings, or maybe like their kids'
Mm-hmm.
college funds, or even to, and you did mention it, to growing their money to maybe like an investment or something, just to get
Yeah,
started.
just to start it. And you know
Yeah.
what? Our investments, depending on where they are and what they are, they're treated differently when it comes to taxes. So understanding
Oh
how
yeah.
money grows, how money gets taxed, and it's a very empowering, shift, which also brings to the table the importance of mindset,
Mm.
money mindset, and our identity determines like what we feel we deserve. So the habits and the mindset really do go hand in hand.
I love that like everything keeps circling back around to each other. Like you know, to be able to grow your money, to keep your money and grow your money, you have to understand, you know, financial, a little bit more about financial education, about yourself and your
Mm-hmm.
habits, so that you know you don't make the bad decisions, so that you can keep more of your money, so that you can grow. Like it all just, I
Yeah,
love
and then
that.
knowing what those simple fundamentals are, it's like, well, now I know how and where to even put it, like what to even do with it, what to even expect, right?
Yeah.
So each one of us needs to have like that vision, that that picture in our mind of where we're going, right? Like, well, how much do I need? What do I need? A year from now, 5 years, 10 years. But really, if we could start moving some blockades that are right here in front of us by seeing a a visual or feeling it and going, I see how my debt's going to come down, and in 3 years I'll be debt free. For
Yeah.
example, that's one client I worked with.
That would be so awesome for so many people. So I'm
Absolutely.
hearing you say like these kind of action items, and I can almost hear the parents like just yelling it at me, like, "What can we do?" Like specifically, like because you know people need that clarity. And
Yes.
I'm hearing you talk about like debt reduction, or even like just debt awareness, and you know being aware of your habits as
Yes.
well.
Yes, absolutely. And some people don't realize the impact that the debt may be happening. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all debt is bad, and knowing how to leverage it in your favor is
Yes,
key, right? So I'm not
which
going
goes
to,
right back to that financial
emphasize on that,
education.
but some people can be making a lot of money and they have debt, but their income is addressing the debt for the time being, right?
Yeah.
And we know that debt compounds, right? So bad habits will compound, good habits will as well. Okay.
I think that probably is just an amazing nugget right there that parents need to keep in head, that in their minds, that not only do your bad habits have long lasting effects, but so do your good habits. And so it's not just enough to be aware of what you're doing, you know, as far as your habits, but also to try to change those toward the more positive. I think that goes with children too. Like we want to
Absolutely.
teach our
So,
kids to have good
you know,
habits.
I just want to paint a picture of hope here. So as 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 adults, we're just going, oh my gosh, it can be overwhelming. But when we have, our whys in front of us every day, we before we fall asleep, we're thinking about them, right? Our
Yeah.
children or our students, or
The
people in
reason you
life.
keep
I mean,
going.
I mean,
Yeah.
I love people. I just always have. So if I feel like there's a injustice that needs to be corrected, I will, I will be laser focused on that, right? So helping people become aware of it and helping them become equipped, you know?
Yes.
So that is really, really key. And I just love witnessing that shift, that even sensing that energetic shift when
Mm-hmm.
people feel like, you know what, I already feel the hope of what it's going to be like to be out of this situation. And I'm not out of it. I already know that they're feeling it. And it's just one of those things that I want as many people as possible to have that.
Yeah. And I can say just out
The
of
hope. The hope.
yeah, out of my personal experience, and one of the reasons why I really wanted you to be a part of this, Marty, was because that and we knew each other for a while before this happened, but I had, and everyone who's seen me at an event knows that there was a time when my husband was unemployed, and it felt like the world was crashing down on us. Just you know, I've been there more than once, not happy about that, but I one of the things I did was we spoke, and Marty is just this beacon of hope where you know she's there to answer your questions. So I want to make sure that we also make sure where people can find you. Even though we've got like time left, I just want to make sure we definitely get saying that, because you know Marty's great at helping people. So where can people find you?
So great. Thank you, Victoria. So the way people can find me is to go to my website, wfgconnects.com/M Rogers. That's MROGERS.
Awesome. And what I really wanted to get into a little bit more, because we were just talking about it, was that the action items of what can people do. So
Well, absolutely. So I want to just emphasize that getting control over some understanding, the basic
mm-hmm.
fundamentals, because The key thing in here is to help people make a simple shift, transition, to start doing one powerful step for
Yeah.
themselves, right? To get them one win. What if we could help someone start getting on track of getting out of debt? Even if
Yeah.
that takes 2.5, 3 years or so, right? It's still going to be here, right? If we can start putting money back into their pocket, right?
Yeah.
Increasing cash flow from that standpoint alone.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
know, I mean, I know we kept coming back to kind of the same things and going into a little bit more in depth, and it just kind of as an example, because we were talking about getting control. And I know we already said, making money and keeping your money and being aware of your financial education or their lack of, and understanding or lacking in your discipline, and being able to make better financial decisions. And all of this kind of goes together. But I mean, and I don't have a problem talking about it, that one of the things that we did when me and my husband were in a not great financial situation, and we were, he was unemployed for a while, was the first thing that you did was like, here's a financial like analysis, go fill it up and like, figure out where you are. And that was, and I know it all falls into all those that we already mentioned, but that was critical to me, to being able
It
to
really is.
realize. I remember we talked about it, or I came to you and I was like, I knew that we had some debt, but I didn't realize that it was so much.
Right, right. And you know what? It is not as scary as it may seem. Of course, I'm not going to say there's not going to be some emotions around it, but you're going to be
Yeah.
totally safe. I'm there to guide you through it, provide feedback and a illustrated map of where you are and how I could make some suggestions of, let's start to find some money that may be going in areas that don't need to be, you know, let's start to kind of redirect some stuff. And,
Yeah, reshifting.
here's the truth. In our minds, our situation is not as great as sometimes we think it is, but it's sometimes, the good news is it's not as bad.
Yeah.
It's not as bad because there is hope. It's like, well, we can make some tweaks, a few shifts. And I want people to start to really get in touch with what their hopes and dreams are again.
Yeah, I think that
That's
was
something,
that was
I
something
think
we talked
that's
about.
something, yeah, I think that's something for sure that we stop giving ourselves permission to do, you know, and
Yeah.
stop punishing yourself and just start, and I think it really helps by staying out of isolation. Start talking about it with a
Your
safe
friends,
person,
and
right?
yeah,
Someone
or
you
your
feel
or your
safe with,
spouse.
and they're equipped to hide and guide you through it, you know.
Yeah. And I think, and that's, I always tell parents to talk with their kids about money, and I think it's important, because you guys can't, as a team, you can't push in the same direction if you don't all know what's going on. Which I know, we keep coming back to this. Which, I mean, is the crux of the talk here, which is to know your money, and to know, your position, yourself, your financial
Exactly.
situation,
And yes,
and
and
and to do something
including
about it.
including your children
Yeah.
along with it. You can start putting some things in place for your children while doing that for yourself at the same time. You
Yes.
know
And then they'll begin to know how they make money, how they can learn to keep it, and how they can learn to grow
exactly,
it and be
because
better
kids
off.
kids love this. By the way,
Oh,
they
kids
love
love
this.
money.
They
They,
love money, and I want kids to feel good about that. I don't want them to feel bad about that. I want them to feel good. You
yeah,
know
we want to have a positive correlation, so they're not trying to avoid dealing with it. And I do think
exactly.
as adults
That's
we do avoid
really
dealing with
key what you
stuff.
just said. That's
Hmm.
really key. Absolutely.
So we've got, we want parents to do like a little financial checkup. Do you, and I know like you do consulting, obviously, is there something before they come to you with like all their details that they can do? Any resources or something that you have for parents?
Absolutely. And I want you to go to my website, and at the very top of the homepage, it has a banner. It has a financial literacy test. Quite fun. 5 questions. It'll give you your results, and you'll start to match up, what you got right, what you missed, and it helps you kind of bridge the gap of understanding. You can send me a email, and I will respond to you if you'd like to have a conversation over the phone for 15 minutes. So maybe we can identify some things that are of concern to you right now, like maybe one or two things that are concerned, what maybe your one or two top goals are, and how maybe we might be able to bridge the gap. If I can give you any suggestion, I promise you I will. If
Yo,
I
you
feel
definitely
something
will.
else, if I
She's so
can,
awesome.
if I could direct you to somebody else to help you specifically with the problem that's unique, that's not in my bandwidth, I absolutely will.
First off, I don't think I've taken that quiz, so I can't help you guys. Sorry. Um, but that's awesome. And also, I can see, a lot of parents who have older kids would probably, you guys can take it together and see, maybe you guys have different answers and, compare and contrast. Who knows? Maybe your kids know more than you do.
That I was just going to say that it's revealing. I have two sons; they're both adults, and my oldest, he's in his early 20s. He was saying to me yesterday, I would never go into deep debt. Always want to keep it. And I was thinking in my mind, like, oh, good. Like, I was getting the answers to questions I was afraid to ask, because those of us that have, young adult kids, it's a different animal.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
you
like,
want to know, you want to have those conversations with your kids,
yeah,
particularly
it's
if
like,
they're.
but then it's like, oh, so you do use a credit card, knowing that's okay, but he's using it responsibly. Like, oh, thank goodness. Thank
That's good.
goodness.
Yeah, I mean these are tools, so you're like knowing, and that goes back to making those decisions. Not every path is the same for everybody. Actually, we ended up, me and my husband personally, we fixed our situation, our financial debt. We actually lowered our majority of our debt by our interest rates for it for about 10%, I think it was, like on average for all of the debt that we had, by taking out a personal loan to pay off our credit card debt and close down those accounts. And so, is it still debt? Yeah, but it's making the good decisions and being
It's
financially educated.
re-strategizing. Like, how can
Yeah.
we reposition ourselves, buy extra time,
Yeah.
and reduce what's going out, so
And
you
I
can
I
close that.
honestly would never have even thought of that if we, because I remember your form that you did with us had actually, what the debt amount was and what the percentage rate was, I believe. And I would have never thought about that, because the idea when you're already in debt to use more debt to help yourself seems counterintuitive. But it was thinking about those percentage rates that you and I talked about,
Yes.
uh, that really helped me to strategize.
Yes.
And I genuinely, I'm gonna like get all emotional. I genuinely would not have thought of and been able to strategize that if it wasn't for the conversations I had with you that helped me feel more in control, identify my problems, stop, those bad habits like you're saying, and really get a little bit more discipline in my life to figure out how to fix my individual situation. So I always recommend going to an expert, because it
Yes.
can make such a big difference for you. And one thing I wanted to bring actually back up with you, and again, that goes into financial education and making good decisions, is, you said that if you don't have a person, if you yourself can't help, then you know a lot of people. And one of the things that you and I talked about was debt
Exactly.
reduction,
Yep.
which is huge
Yes.
and is a
Yep.
huge, makes a huge difference.
Yes.
So, what would be, and I'm fairly sure I actually know the answer to this one, but what would be the big decision that, or the big suggestion that you would make for people, as far as a takeaway action with your, your make it, your keep it, and your grow it, to be able to deal with their debt
Yes. Well,
and making
I
those
think
decisions?
four important key questions to ask yourself, and write this down because you know the answers to them, is to understand what your debt is and allocate them. I was really impressed with how you came back with such organization, Victoria.
Thank
What
you.
your income is and what your expenses are regularly,
Mm-hmm.
and what you have or may need to have in your emergency fund, right?
Yes.
So write down your debt, write down your income, write down your mortgage or
Expenses.
rent
Yeah.
expenses, those things that don't really change. And then emergency funding, how much you have, how much more you need, or, how much you need to get to, you know? So that's the best way. And they say typically we need about, 3 months, sometimes more. But right now, I think a lot of reality is hitting home for a lot of people.
Yes.
And, we just want to make sure that we're availing ourselves, right? So that's why working together is going to be very impactful, because we want to empower children, but we also want to empower the adults too, so that it can synergistically kind of come together and start really making things, really things happen in a definitive way. in a
Yes, and
shorter
I
period
think
of
that's
time.
the key right there is not to just have any of this stuff in your head, but like you said, write it down, have it definitive and clear.
Yes, and share
So,
it with someone like myself. I'm happy to go through that with you.
hmm
And, it's just being willing to pull back that curtain. And I'm telling you, you're
it's
going to
like the
feel a lot
Wizard of
more,
Oz.
yeah, you're going to feel a lot more relieved and hope. And someone like myself, just like if I were in the situation, I would outsource it to another professional. Like, can you help walk me through this? Because it's way too emotional when we're looking at our own stuff.
Yes. And that
But
goes back to your mindset that you were saying
yeah, we're
before.
helping with someone who we can trust,
Yeah.
who's licensed, who knows the rules. I know who and where to go to double check, and to if you need to take out loans, I'll be able to help navigate that process to help you with other sources I have to see what is the best option for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes people make a quick decision without consulting somebody else, and they doubled or tripled their debt in doing so. So it's really important to know what your
Sometimes it's
options
good to have a check. Yeah. Just to,
are.
make sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I do know, we have a lot of people. This is going to be going up publicly online, and there's several people from a lot of different places coming to this event. And, you actually, I know that you're located in California because we met. So, but, if even if you're like somewhere on like the other side of the country, uh, they can still reach out to you because I know that you're part of a large
absolutely,
network.
absolutely. I'm licensed in multiple states, not just California.
Yeah.
I'm licensed in the east, north, east coast, northwest, south, southwest.
Awesome. Yeah, because I
Absolutely.
think a lot of people think that locally restricted, and
Right.
they
For
don't want to
me,
reach
I'm
out.
licensed in multiple states.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Exactly, which
Right.
is why I wanted to point it out because I know a lot of people, like I
Yes.
said, they think
I'm
that.
glad you said that because sometimes I forget that it's important to mention that. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
no
And
worries.
now we have technology, so I consult with people on line as well. So
Yeah, which everyone's zooming these days because we're all stuck in
we're
our
we're all
homes.
zooming. We're all zooming. Absolutely.
It's really funny because I have cats, and I'm surprised none of them has tried to make an appearance. But when they run around, we call it the zoomies. So
Oh, how cute.
yeah.
That's cute.
So just to make sure I want to bring this back for parents around. We've got our three enemies, our must dos, and our takeaways. So I'm gonna have you go ahead and recap that for us, Marty.
Yeah, so recap when it comes to our finances, really, our problems stem from three enemies, which is lack of understanding. Okay? And when we don't understand it or feel informed and empowered, we don't have the discipline because we don't understand
What's
what,
going
where, or
on?
why to position ourselves, our money and our mindset. Which
Yes.
number three leads to very poor decisions, right? And it's not intentional, it's just, oh my goodness. So those are the three things that really impair us, you know? And, if I were to shed some light on how to begin to get out of it, you want to, you know, um, take what you make. We all need to make money and we want to keep our money. And even if it's like the minimum of what you can start with, as long as it's a habit and increasing as soon and
Mm-hmm.
as consistently as possible, so that you can grow your money. Now, these are habits that don't transform overnight, but
Oh
you're going to
yes.
start to feel increased self-esteem, increased certainty, and confidence. Because what I want you to do is feel empowered to share this with your children so they can start to implement that mindset and those habits from a very young age, knowing that they need to do that. I feel really blessed that my dad told me when I was 19 years old, like, I want you to consistently put money aside from your job. That's when I started working. And it wasn't so much education, but being educated in the right ways.
That's awesome. And again, just remind people where they can find you so that they can reach you and take your money quiz and get your thoughts and
Absolutely. So go to wfgconnects.com/M Rogers.
awesome. And I'll try to put it in the description link. And I just wanted to remind everyone, the reason that we're bringing some of these people to speak for this conference is not just because it is relevant to homeschooling, but it's that skills that anyone can use anywhere, and some expertise of a trusted expert that I know into this, so that everyone can benefit. And I'm so grateful that you wanted to be part of this as well, Marti. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm really excited. I know we've been talking about this for a couple years at least. Like, we need to be doing something together, you know.
We're going to do more together. We're going to help lots of families, and it's going to be great. And so and anyone, like, even if you're just, like, hey, maybe I should just talk to her, like, just, I think I'm pretty good, but, like, why I could be better,
Yeah,
why not?
exactly.
Just reach out, Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this, and I'm excited about what's to come.
Yay.